All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're watching. Today, I want to talk about 3 biggest mistakes that we actually make for fantasizing about our past relationship. So it's 3 mistakes for fantasizing about our past relationship. We all do it. We fantasize about the past, right? An old flame. Okay, here's the 3 problem with that. Fantasy covers up the pain, your current reality, your current pain. It's temporary. It's just a slight temporary relief from life or from your disappointment. Number 2, fantasy causes no harm. That's our thinking. Fantasy doesn't cause any harm. It's just harming me. That's a false thinking, and I'll tell you what in a minute. And the 3rd problem is fantasy does blind you from the consequences of your present, past, and it blinds you from the consequences of your future. So the worst part about these 3 beliefs that we may have, that a fantasy is just, it's not a big deal, it doesn't hurt anybody, I'm not, it actually does. Number 1, it keeps you living in a false reality while your current reality is breaking apart. Your current reality is in pain. Your current reality is loneliness. But when we're so focused on that fantasy that you are disconnected from really the responsibility of your current reality. And the second thing, fantasy arms the opportunity to actually meet somebody new. It arms the opportunity to meet somebody new. And really what it does, it robs you from your self-worth, your self-esteem. It robs you because you're still creating this relationship that you know you can't have, or that's in the past, which disconnects you from the present, but it also robs you. If you're in a current relationship and you're still fantasizing about someone else, it robs you. It literally takes away from the person that you're with, because the person that you're with cannot compete with a fantasy, because a fantasy is always nice. A fantasy doesn't go wrong. A fantasy is always on point. And the last thing, it's very self-centered. The problem is very self-centered. It's created by fear of not having. So we create by a lack of not doing, not taking responsibility, not being responsible for the current relationship. And it's created for a disconnection to the pain. It's created for disconnection. Disconnection from the present, disconnection from the past is create to disconnect. And when you're creating to disconnect, you're focused more on yourself than anybody else. You disconnect the fact that you're hurting people. You disconnect the fact that you're hurting yourself. So the 3 things that I'll tell you, the very first thing to be able to shift this, right? Number 1 is recover yourself, your true self. Be in the rediscovering who you truly are. In Discovering Your Authentic Self course that I have, a coaching course, that's what we do. We go back to who you originally are. And once you have that, right? The second thing is you get to heal the pain. You get to deal and heal the pain that you've been trying to avoid. You're focusing on for a temporary time to actually heal the pain versus focusing for a temporary time to run away from the pain, which is not. And the last thing is then you get to create the type of relationship that you want. But it starts with creating the type of person you want to be in a relationship, which takes being vulnerable and being open to pain. But with directions, you could actually create that relationship. It's an action. It's not a fantasy. So fantasy is absent at the one thing, which is action. What I'm talking about is actually going with your authentic self, creating what you want, stepping into that with some coaching and getting what you want versus living in this false fantasy. Living in this false fantasy does not get you close to what you want, okay? Because in our mind, we think about, oh, how good it was in the past. Man, come on. You know it wasn't. And here's the thing, there's a subconscious pain that's attached to that fantasy because it's covering the pain, right? So that subconscious pain wants to reoccur again in your life. And who does it remind you of? Does it remind you of maybe mom and dad abandoning you, not being loved? Because that fantasy, the truth, is a dangling carrot, but the actual pain attached to that fantasy, the end result is still abandonment, loneliness, and hurt. Once you start to distinguish the 2 and go back to rediscovering your true self, healing the pain that you're trying to avoid, and working on creating the right relationship by being the right person and taking the right step, you'll get there. Again, put me on the comment And then I'll reach out to you so you can start in your journey of discovering your authentic self. Thank you for watching.